houses still stand today in old Philippine towns and have become popular attractions. These heritage treasures took centuries to perfect, and their creation finds its roots in the history of the Filipino identity itself. This story is found in Casa Gorordo. One way of understanding Filipino identity is to look at the cultural phenomenon of the mestizo, a Spanish word that simply means mixed. It describes the cultural blending that occurred in the Philippines due to its long colonial history. Mestizo culture can also be found in many parts of the world that once belonged to the Spanish Empire. In the Philippines, however, which is far removed from the other Hispanic countries in the Americas, it took on a unique form, a blend of indigenous, European, and other Asian cultures, most notably Chinese. This is evident not just in physical appearance, but also in different social aspects, such as fashion, performing arts, food, visual arts, and social rituals. But it is in architecture that this cultural fusion takes its grandest forms. Located in Old Parian, where Chinese immigrants settled in the early Spanish period, Casa Gorordo sits in a culturally diverse district brought about by intermarriages between native, Chinese, and Spanish families. One will see and feel in the house's architectural construct and aesthetics evidences of this rich cultural melding. So what actually makes balay na tisa, such as Casa Gorordo, mestizo? To answer this, let's take a look at its humble beginnings in the Payag. Designed for the marine tropical climate of the islands, the Payag is made of locally sourced materials. It is raised from the ground on posts or stilts to adapt to the tides and flooding, and to protect dwellers from wild animals. It also provides hygiene and ventilation. The upper floor, called the taas, served as the living quarters, while the ground floor, called the silong, was where domesticated animals were kept and where large tools and implements were stored. Light and relatively easy to construct, it was well adapted to a migratory lifestyle. When the Spaniards started building urban settlements, qualities of the Payag were integrated into their own house-building tradition. By the 1600s, the term arquitectura mestiza, or mestizo architecture, was already coined to denote structures that combine both native and Spanish construction styles. Added to the Payag structure were European architectural components, coral stone walls to dress the ground floor, the tiled roof or teja, and the azotea. The ground floor, or silong, retained its function as a place for domesticated animals and as a storage area. The upper floor took in a new spatial layout that reflected concepts of privacy, social divisions, and behaviors brought by Spanish colonialism. Space divisions in the Payag's upper floor were more flexible. Generally, a main area called the ginlawasan served as living, sleeping, and dining area. An extension called the pantao was where laundry and sometimes bathing was done. The kitchen was where utensils and dining implements were kept. Cooking, however, was done in the abuhan, which was built as an extension of the upper floor or located in a separate hut. On the other hand, the balay ngatisa's upper floor was partitioned into several standard spaces: bedrooms, the living room or sala, the caída, and the dining room. Sometimes other rooms with special functions, such as the library, were also created. Casa Gorordo holds the distinction as one of those rare colonial-era Philippine houses with a chapel inside. An azotea was usually added to extend the upper floor space for different purposes: laundry, ironing, and social gatherings. Bathrooms and kitchens located in the upper floor were luxuries enjoyed by a few wealthy families in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The presence of 2 or more bedrooms in the upper floor indicates Western notions of gender division, individualism, and distinction between adults and children. Philippine colonial culture regulated people's interactions with norms and mores based on social status. These codes of social behaviors were also constituted in the balay ngatisa's architectural makeup. The descanso, a receiving area for visitors, allowed house owners to filter guests. The size of the staircase implied a family's standing in the community. Levels of privacy were marked off subtly by intricately carved wooden arches placed along the caída or hallway. To accommodate all these structural transformations, the balay ngatisa was enlarged from the payag, and its size came to symbolize a family's prominence in society. Many architectural features of Casa Gorordo are adapted from the payag. However, other features such as ventanillas and capiz shell windows are innovations in response to environmental conditions. While European construction technologies were applied, locally available materials were used: limestone, pounded seashells, corals, and lauat, a local plant used as a compacting agent for its sticky sap. The availability of coral stone in the Visayas explains its widespread use during the Spanish colonial period in this part of the country and made it necessary to produce bricks in great volumes. Clay was mostly used to fabricate the tisa, or tiles, for the roof. Colonial architecture widely utilized wood in its construction, and in the best constructed balay ngatisa like Casa Gorordo, only the choicest combinations of hardwoods from Visayan rainforests were used. With the introduction of European house building techniques, the need for craftsmen who were familiar with these technologies arose. This need was satisfied largely by Chinese artisans who migrated to the colony. Hence, some of the house's architectural and design features integrated Chinese influences. This is readily visible in the graceful curves in the corners of the roofs and wooden corbels that jut out of walls and posts of Casa Gorordo and other balay ngatisa that are reminiscent of Chinese palaces and pavilions. Chinese craftsmanship and aesthetics in Filipino architecture are also seen widely in other colonial edifices, particularly in churches. The influx of new technologies and new lifestyles, particularly in the early 20th century, steadily changed the architectural and functional needs of houses. As a result, Philippine dwellings diversified in form. The traditional balay ngatisa lost popularity as a model for local house construction. Yet there is something about this remnant of the past that Filipinos still identify strongly with. For embedded on its walls, the centuries of cultural blending is the story of the origins of modern Filipino identity.